the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life, because the Mets are really socking the ball, knocking those home runs over the wall. East side, west side, everybody's coming down to meet the METS Mets of New York town. Oh, the butcher and the baker and the people on the streets, where do they go? To meet the Mets! Oh, they're hollering and cheering and they're jumping in their seats. Where do they go? To meet the Mets! All the fans are true to the orange and blue, so hurry up and come on down, 'cause we got ourselves a ball club, the Mets of New York town. Give 'em a yell! Give 'em a hand! And let 'em know you're rooting in the stand. Come on and meet the Mets. Meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life, because the Mets are really socking the ball, knocking those home runs over the wall. East side, west side, everybody's coming down to meet the METS Mets of New York town, of New York town.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome back to Talking Mets at Rob with some breaking news. About little more than an hour ago, the New York Mets make a trade with the Milwaukee Brewers for Adrian Hauser and Tyron Taylor. Another couple of depth moves for the rotation and the bench, and we're going to talk all about it and what this means for other depth pieces that the Mets were interested in, such as Michael Taylor, who was an option that we talked about a couple of weeks ago that the Mets are interested in. And I think Tyron Taylor kind of fits that mold. We'll probably fight it out for one of the outfield depth moves. You think of DJ Stewart and Tyron Taylor kind of mix up with themselves in a sense that DJ Stewart's a lefty, Tyron Taylor's a righty. So that helps. Tyron Taylor does have some pop. Excuse me. And he also plays all three outfield positions, which is always something that David Stern's always talked about with versatility, and that is exactly what he is doing. And when it comes to Adrian Hauser, look, this is not a sexy move, right? We all know that. We all understand that, but it's a solid move for what the Mets extremely lacked, and that was competent starting pitching. The problem was when you had ERAs in the 5s and the 6s that were your 4th, 5th, and 6th starters, you gave your team basically no chance to win. The time your team started to score runs and you finally got your bullpen in, you were down 4 or 5 runs already, and it was always an uphill climb for the Mets when it came to, sorry about that, my phone is ringing and I'm not sure why. I apologize for that. And that was the biggest problem. And I was just talking on Twitter with a couple of people. The fact of the matter is, when it comes to this trade, is that the depth pieces are not the sexy moves. Fans are going to get a little bit annoyed, even though this is a solid move, considering the fact that you traded Coleman Crowe, who was one of your prospects that you traded, that you got in a trade for Eduardo Escobar. So basically, you flipped Escobar for a number 4, number 5 in Hauser, and a solid bench outfielder, bench depth piece that has some power. And honestly, that's a good trade. It is, especially when you're waiting around and the Yamamoto situation is at a stalemate until he makes his decision. The Mets are looking more of the outside part of the roster, the remaining parts of their 26-man roster, or even 40-man roster, which they had a couple of spots still available. I think they have 3 or 4 spots left available on the 40-man roster. So these moves are important. And this also puts into effect that I still think more and more that a 6-man rotation is happening, even if the Mets get Yamamoto or not. So that's where I'm looking at when it comes to the Mets and why a deal like this is made. Again, clearly David Stearns has a good relationship with the Brewers, and all that nonsense that people talked about that, the Brewers owners and the relationship is not going to be good because the Mets are trying to get Stearns for years. Clearly that's not the case. So there's good dialogue, there's good relationships that David Stearns has with the organization, with the Brewers, and that can come into a very important issue at the deadline if Corbin Burnes doesn't get traded in the offseason and the Mets are in a playoff position at the deadline and they need starting pitching. Corbin Burnes could be that option. And Stearns has that dialogue and that relationship that could actually help the Mets going forward. So once again, guys, if you haven't heard the news, the Mets trade for Adrian Hauser and Tyron Taylor from the Brewers for prospect Coleman Crowe. Who is that? Coleman Crowe was the guy that the Mets got in return for trading Eduardo Escobar to the Los Angeles Angels. So you basically flipping Escobar for those two guys. And again, Adrian Hauser is a 4th, 5th, 6th starter type of guy. Again, a 4.12 ERA is not. Don't think that is a bad ERA because, again, I've said this for years. A 4th, 5th starter. Find me a pitcher that has an under 4 ERA that is a 4th or 5th starter. What you look for 4th or 5th starters is a guy that can go out there every 5th day, give you innings, provide some bullpen relief where you don't have to get these guys out in the 4th or 5th inning. You can extend these guys extra innings if you need to be because you're not really counting on them to give you the biggest innings in the most important aspects of games of like a Kodai Senga or if the Mets get Yamamoto, stuff like that. Hauser is important. And that 4.12 ERA, and again, the Mets 4 through 6 starters last year had over a 5 ERA, and it never got better. So this is an upgrade because a 4.12 ERA as your 4th to 5th starter is something that is exactly what 99.9% of teams have. All you need now is a guy like Hauser who has decent stuff, who will give you a chance to win every 5th day. He's going to take the ball. That's the important thing when it comes to this move. And the Tyron Taylor situation is just a little bit of a, with the Brewers situation, it's a little bit of a salary dump as well with both of these contracts. Hauser only has, he's a rental, he's 1 year, but Tyron Taylor has 3 years left on his deal. So you got a little bit of a guy that can be a bench piece and that can fill in roles just in case of an injury for a couple of weeks, or a guy that, if somebody's not playing, well, you fill him in over there as well. And he provides that pop as well off the bench, which the Mets were really lacking last season. They had no pop off the bench. And that was the biggest problem that I think the Mets had. Every time, either if it was somebody not playing well as a starter, there was not really an option you can go to and say, hey, I feel comfortable putting this bench piece in to give us a little bit of a spark, a guy that can put up some numbers when the starter is struggling. And I think Tyron Taylor can do that. And I think DJ Stewart can do that. And that's stuff that you need on the bench and the depth you need on the bench, because as soon as an injury happened or as soon as a player wasn't performing as a starter, there was nobody to go to that Buck Showalter at the time could not trust. Like, who are you going to put out there? And that was the biggest concern. There was no trust with the bench or the depth pieces. And it just got worse because your depth pieces were 10 times worse than the actual starters that weren't performing or were injured. And that's where the Mets fell into between a rock and a hard place, because they couldn't get out of basically the quicksand that they were falling into. And that's where I think the Mets and David Stearns, and why I think the Brewers were successful, not because he had to make these moves because they didn't have the resources, is because he made those moves. And even if they didn't have a starter doing well, they knew they had a bench piece, a depth piece that can fill in and provide a little bit of a spark and some numbers. And then you don't have to worry about it until, your starter gets it together and figures it out. And then you go back to him. That was what the Mets did so well in 2022. We all forget that McGill and David Peterson, who were in this rotation for a lot of games, I think each of them pitched 13 to 14 games during that season. And they were key roles of why the Mets were so good when Scherzer went down, when Walker went down, when DeGrom was down. And then with the bench pieces, when Nimmo went down for a couple of weeks, Travis Jankowski stepped in. Those things mattered, and it didn't hurt the team overall in production. They didn't provide the same production as your starters, but when your starters were either injured or not performing, you got guys to step in and fill a role that they did a good job in. And that's what the Mets were lacking last year. And I think this is why these type of deals and all these crazy signings that you see with the bullpen that are a ton of arms that have 4 ERAs, 5 ERAs, these are guys that have good stuff that might have a little bit of a problem with walking people, or a guy that might have been that, was injured and didn't really have the year that he had the year prior. And these depth pieces really do matter. So let me check the comments really quick, guys. And if you just tuned in, the Mets made a trade with the Brewers, Adrian Hauser, who is another depth rotation guy, 4th, 5th starter. Technically could be a 5th starter, 6th starter, depending on what the Mets do with the rotation. And Tyron Taylor is a depth outfield piece that can fit well on the Mets bench, who could play all 3 outfield positions. He played in, I believe, 100 and I think just under 200 games, and he hit 30 home runs. And that was mostly, playing 80, half a season in each of the 3 seasons. So he does have a little bit of pop. If you look on Twitter right now, they're showing videos of Tyron Taylor. He has some pop. He's a good defender, so you can put him in any outfield position, and you're not going to worry about lacking defense. And again, another thing that the Mets were lacking was when they replace guys, if they gave Nimmo a day off, if they gave Canna a day off, if Marte was, in and out of the lineup, there was guys that weren't very good. They weren't good defensively. They weren't good offensively. So they were basically holding the fort, and you just prayed that they weren't a complete disaster. In this case, these are major league guys that step in and do their job. That's it. That's what you need. You need guys to say, hey, Nimmo's going to be out for a week, 2 weeks. Tyron, take over center field. We know you're going to be good defensively. You have a little bit of speed. You have a little bit of pop. We're not expecting you to put up Nimmo numbers, but you can hold down the fort until Nimmo comes back. This is so important that even Met fans that I never agree with, and people that always disagree with each other on Mets Twitter or all over the place on social media, like this trade. This was a solid trade. You got a Coleman Crow, who, by the way, who is injured and had surgery, so he's not going to even be available for a little bit of a time for this season. So you're basically trading a guy that just had surgery and a guy that you traded for that you gave an Escobar that wasn't really doing anything anyway. So you basically flipped Escobar for these two who can really help your team in 2024. So, he's got good defense, Tyron Taylor. Got some speed and got a little bit of pop. Again, I'm not saying he's going to hit 35 home runs, even though if you look, he hit 10 home runs in 81 games. Do the math. If he plays another 30 to 40 games, not even. If he plays say about another 40 games, plays 120 games, say. Worst case scenario, say somebody gets hurt and he has to play about 40 to 45 games as a starter. He can easily hit 20 home runs. And and that's the other thing. You want to the problem is the Mets didn't really have major leaguers doing their job. You need bench pieces and depth pieces that come in that are major league ready, that are major league talent that can come in and know their roles. There was too many times when half the Mets team didn't know their roles because they were basically borderline minor leaguers and they weren't providing any type of, all right, what you want when there's an injury or when a starter is struggling is a guy to come in, do their job, don't hurt you, and keep you afloat in that position and in the lineup, depending on what you're looking at here, that can do their job until the starter gets right or the starter who is injured comes back. That's the point. And that's why this is a good trade. So again, it's Coleman Crow, who had surgery. He's not going to be most likely available for at least the first couple of months. And he's the guy that I don't know if the Mets are really digging. And again, this wasn't a David Stearns trade. This was a Billy Epler trade. So again, David Stearns, who was, filming through the farm system to see what guys he likes and what guy he doesn't like. And he sees guys, now that you're seeing him trade certain, they're not top prospects, but prospects, tells you they're starting to film through what they like and what they don't like, or what guys are expendable. And that's why it's also important to see trades like this, because David Stearns is doing the work along with his developmental staff and his scouting staff, saying, all right, these guys are expendable. If you can get something for them that can help this 2024 team, do it. And this is what you see with that as well. Well, Robert, that's fine. Like I said, Francisco Alvarez can't catch every day, right? So when Hauser comes up in the rotation, Omar Narvaez on a Saturday or a Sunday or whatever day it is, to give Alvarez a day off. And again, this is the point of the DH that I think is important. I think the Mets don't utilize this enough, and I think they should. Guys like Francisco Alvarez, right? If you want his bat in a lineup, you can DH him. You don't have to catch him. You can put Omar Narvaez in a spot where Hauser's pitching. Makes sense, right? And that's what I think that everybody is so infatuated with, just getting an everyday DH in a JD Martinez, Jorge Soler, Rhys Hoskins, Teoscar Hernandez. Why don't you use the DH by giving guys day off on the field where you don't lose their bat and put him at the DH? You want to give Alonso a day off? Fine. Put him at DH. You want to give Nimmo a day off his feet on the field? Good. DH him. Same thing with Marte. Same thing with Lindor. Not really Lindor, because Lindor likes to play every day. But all these guys you can give days off to and use that DH as a day off on the field, but still have their bat available. Jonathan, no updates as of yet with Yamamoto, unfortunately. And this is why I think it was so important. And it kind of made Met fans, I think, a little bit of sigh of relief that a trade like this happened, because you see the Mets are doing work. They're not just, in a stalemate position because of Yamamoto. They're working. They just got more depth in their rotation. They just got more depth on their bench. So they're not just waiting around for Yamamoto and twiggling their thumbs and folding their hands on the desk to see what happens. They're not waiting, and I think that's important. Hold on one second. Yeah, Grant's back. We love Grant. We love Grant on this channel. Robert, I don't see him as our starting left fielder. Again, there's still a lot of offseason left to go. There's still outfielders out there. I can see, I don't see Taylor as an everyday left fielder. See, again, I don't know how much David Stearns is going to see if Gilbert or Acuna is going to be one of those guys that are going to get an option to play as well or get a chance to make the team. But you have to see the rest of the moves. That's the thing that we don't know yet. So that's something that we just have to wait and see. Miggs, they traded Coleman Crow, which they got from the Eduardo Escobar trade at the deadline last year for Adrian Hauser and Tyron Taylor, 2 depth pieces one for the rotation, one for the bench. And, I want to see what the Mets are going to do, because I don't know. DJ Stewart and Tyron Taylor kind of make sense since they're lefty and righty. They can play, DJ Stewart can play the corners. Excuse me. And Tyron Taylor can play all 3 outfield positions. So, John, I missed your super chat. I'm sorry. There was oh, here we go. I see it. I'm sorry about that. There we go. Yeah, John, I'm sorry about that. It kind of ran through quickly. I'm sorry about that. And it was in a weird color. It's in a light blue, and my chat is kind of like a lightish blue, so it kind of just missed it. I apologize for that. Yeah, solid trade, John, 100%. Hauser is the new Trevor Williams. Yeah, I mean, you hope that's the case, right? You hope that's the case. Now, I think Hauser is probably more likely in the rotation as a way to add to that depth in that rotation. Trevor Williams was more of a long man in the bullpen, or guy who was the next guy up and from the minor leagues for injury purposes, or like a doubleheader or something like that. But yeah, it's a good move. It definitely could be a Trevor Williams type of signing. And, we didn't even talk about that, right? So, all right, let me catch up there. All right, guys, I'm just checking, making sure I didn't miss anything in the chat because for some reason, I don't know why, but they changed the chat on my end to like a lightish blue. Yet, if you do a super chat that's under $5, it comes to this weird blue. And I honestly couldn't tell the difference. And I apologize, John. That's my fault. I couldn't even. I'm like, what the? I'm like, wow. I could if I didn't really look, I would never notice that. All right, guys. So, well, yeah, right. I mean, that's the point, though, right? Lucchesi also is another guy. Again, if the Mets land Yamamoto, I think it kind of is the perfect type of scenario with this rotation because as long as you have a top line guy, and I truly believe that the Mets believe that Kodai Senga, worst case scenario, can be a number one. I know a lot of us don't agree with that. I don't either, but it could be a lot worse than what we've, could be a lot worse. If they do go with Kodai Senga and say they signed a Lucas Giolito and, they have Severino, they have Quintana, they have now Hauser, it's not a sexy bullpen. It's not a sexy starting rotation, but I think it's something that you can get by with for at least half the season. Because if the Mets are in a situation where they're going to make some move at the deadline, that's when they can make their move. Excuse me, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, great, exactly, 100%. Yeah, see, here's the problem with, again, we keep on talking about Pete Alonso extension, guys. The extension is not happening. All right. You don't sign Scott Boras to sign an extension. All right. It's just not happening. Pete Alonso is going to be a free agent. And again, when you have the richest owner in the sport and you got a guy in Pete Alonso, if you believe him, who wants to stay in New York, wants to be a Met, then his last call will be to Steve Cohen saying, hey, listen, the Cubs offered me this. Match it and I'll come back, or do better and I'll come back, or whoever offers it to Pete Alonso. So I'm not worried about that. You shouldn't be worried about that because Cohen is not going to let Pete Alonso go if Pete Alonso wants to be here in free agency. We're too worried about Pete Alonso that's not signing an extension. You don't hire Scott Boras to sign an extension, all right? It's just not happening. Same thing with Juan Soto. The Yankees are not re-signing or extending Juan Soto. He's going to be a free agent. It's just what it is. Miggs, I don't know. Honestly, I don't know. I mean, he says that, but you know what? You say that, and I'm sorry, right? I see Aaron Judge, who, even though became a free agent, who put a little scare in the Yankees, soul, still took less money to come back to the Yankees, even as a unrestricted free agent who could have went anywhere. In Pete Alonso's case, I don't think for 1 second that he would take a little bit less money to come back to the Mets. Do you see the problem with that? Aaron Judge came back to the Yankees for less money than what the Padres and Giants were offering. If the Mets say, listen, you said you wanted to be a Met, and if that's true, there's no reason why you can't take a little less money to come back to the team that brought you up through the system. You see it all the time. Aaron Nola went back to the Phillies for less money than what he was going to get from another team. You saw Aaron Judge last year. So I see it as if Pete Alonso really wants to be here, then he's not going to take every penny he can from the Mets. If you really want to be a Met. It's just that simple. Sorry. There's a player in Aaron Judge that's a better player than Pete Alonso all around that had no problem taking less money going back to the team that he was currently on, that brought him up through the system. Right? I have no problem with Pete Alonso getting Scott Boras. But if the Mets offer him $250 million for 8 years and the Cubs offer him 9 years, $270, and he takes the Cubs deal, well, you were a liar this whole time because you really didn't want to be a Met. Because if you did, you would take a little less money, still getting paid very handsomely. Because Pete Alonso shouldn't get paid more annually than Aaron Judge because he's not a better player than Aaron Judge. Shouldn't get $40 million. You know what? I would give him 30, maybe a little bit more, but not much more than that. I'm sorry. He's the best power hitter in Mets history. But if you only look at it from that perspective and not what he is around the league. Again, did you see an article that came out with the best power hitters in baseball? Pete Alonso wasn't even on that list. Now, I think that's a Mets bias more than anything else, but people don't see Pete Alonso as a star in this league. They see him as a power hitter. That's it. Well, Joel, I mean, you don't like this trade? Again, nothing's happening on the free agent market until Yamamoto signs. So the Mets not doing nothing pissed me off than them making more moves that they actually can make at this moment. Montgomery, Imanaga, Snell. These guys are not making any signings. They're not signing with any team until Yamamoto signs because the teams that missed out on Yamamoto are going to go after those guys. Well, yeah, Joel, of course, because the foundation of a team, and you watched the Mets in 2022, right? Why were they so successful? Because their depth pieces stepped up in the moments when they were needed the most and did their job. You know what was the problem last year? When their starters weren't doing well and guys got injured, their depth pieces were absolutely terrible. They stepped in and didn't do their job. That's the problem. That's why these depth moves are important. These are guys that are major league guys that know their roles, that can step into a situation like Hauser, who can be a fifth starter, who can fill in if there's an injury and hold down the fort. I'm not saying being as good as the guy he's replacing, but hold down the fort and calm things down until that guy is back and ready. Same thing with Tyron Taylor, a professional player, a major league guy who knows his role, knows he's a bench player, and can play all three outfield positions. If anybody in the outfield gets hurt, he can fill in for a couple of weeks and not kill this team. Not saying he's going to put up Nimmo numbers or, if Starlin Marte is healthy and plays well, put on Marte numbers, but he'll hold down the fort until those guys are back and ready. Again, I can show you, Joe, that you were so excited what Peterson and McGill did in 2022 when those are depth pieces, right? Travis Stankowski stepped in numerous times throughout 2022 from injuries and giving guys days off, and guys who weren't playing well, giving them guys a breather so they can get themselves back. Travis Stankowski was a big part of the team as well, with his speed, with his defense, and a couple of times with his bat. I'm not saying this is a sexy trade, but it's a solid trade because this is what the team was lacking last year. And why David Stearns was successful with the Brewers and why they constantly won 88 to 95 games every year was because they always had somebody major league ready that was able to fill in for injuries or fill in for roles where if you had to worry about injuries or you have to worry about a starter that wasn't playing well, so you give him a chance. Joel, what are you talking about? See, this is the problem. I don't even know why you watch baseball, because if you already have a conclusion about the season, then why are you wasting your time? Because did you watch 2015? Did you go into the season saying, oh, well, they're not winning, so who cares? Why do I watch? But I guarantee you were the first one at Citi Field when they were winning in the second half and going to playoff games. I'm sorry. I'm so sick and tired of those type of fans. Go away. Because you are the worst type of fan. If you go into a season not thinking that anything can happen, because if you haven't watched the Mets, and Joel, you claim you watched the Mets a lot for a very long time, a lot of the time the Mets have been successful. They shock the world. You don't have to win the offseason, which clearly didn't work for the Mets last year or in 2022 until the last couple of months. The fact of the matter is, if you don't like this trade, then you don't know enough about baseball and why teams are so successful. Right? Do you know how many injuries, you know how many problems the Rangers had? Do you know why they were so good? Because they filled in with guys that were actually major leaguers that filled into those roles that needed help until those starters came back from injuries or from what they were struggling with. The same thing with the Diamondbacks. They had a lot of young guys, but they brought in veteran guys that know their roles. And then when they got the opportunities to put those veterans in, they performed. Right? We all forget about 2022 and thought it was all about Alonso and Lindor and McNeil. They were a big part of it. But you know what? You know what saved their asses? When guys went down, the depth stepped up. Even Luis Guillorme in 2022, when they needed him, he performed well. Jankowski, Peterson, McGill. We forget about those guys, but they were a big reason why they won 101 games. Nobody wants to talk about that because it's not a sexy move. They didn't win the offseason. You know what? I will have a middle of the road offseason, but you know what? If these are solid moves, and again, these are not moves that are gonna make you world championship teams, because you gotta make some other moves to, you know, put your team out there. But you can't tell me that a team like the Texas Rangers, who everybody said won the offseason, right? They didn't win because of Jacob deGrom. They didn't win for their additions that they made in the offseason. Okay, Joe, well then you should be embarrassed, because if you've been a fan since 1983, you should know why the 86 team won. Why? Because of their depth, because of their bench, because of the guys that weren't the biggest stars, but it was the guys that were balls to the wall, that were hard-nosed, that always did their job when their name got called. Okay, but again, the Mets are not. So, Joel, you don't want them to make any moves until they sign Yamamoto. You see, that is a lazy move from your part. Yamamoto is not signing yet. So should the Mets just wait around and, let's just drink some coffee. Let's just wait around, hang out, and see, and just wait around? No. No, you're bringing up Danny Heap. I'm saying Tyron Taylor can be a Travis Jankowski with a little bit more power. You know, you make it. You always bring up the negative part. Yet when this depth move help you win, you'll be the first one clapping your hands. Again, if you've been a fan since 1983, you should know better. You should know better. It's so frustrating that people don't. Every move that this team makes that's not a big move, they don't like. And it's sad. It's really sad. It's really, really sad. I appreciate that, Shooter. Again, not every move is sexy, but it doesn't mean it's not a solid move. I'm not telling you up here that this is a World Series move, but I'm going to tell you right now, you don't think House is going to go out there every fifth day? And can you find a Met pitcher that had a 4.12 ERA between the 4th through 6th starters? Because the Mets didn't have one last year. Shit, even 3 through 6, they couldn't find a starter that had a 4.12 ERA. Almost all of them had over 5 ERAs. So if you tell me that this isn't better than what the Mets currently had, then you are absolutely lost. If you don't like this move and think it's not a solid move, and you're talking about Yamamoto, which the Mets can't do anything else except wait for him to make his decision, you're the type of fan that won't be happy until they make only big moves. Like, that's the only thing that matters. That's a sad fan. And if you don't like what I have to say, I tell you this, guys, all the time. I am blunt and to the point. I'm not saying that you have to be wrong or right or don't have your opinions. You don't have to like this move. But if you don't think it's a good move, then, and 99.9% of the people do, not just Met fans, but around the league, it's a solid depth move. No, Joel, the point I'm saying is the fact that this could help our team. If you don't think that's true, then you're not paying attention, especially the way baseball is now, that everybody uses their entire bench now. Everybody uses 6, 7, 8 starters throughout the season. Somebody will get hurt. Somebody will suck in May And you might want to skip a start and you bring a guy like Hauser in to fill that spot for a start or two. That's the point. And, if the Mets had a guy like Hauser to fill a Quintana role, maybe it would have been different during those starts instead of bringing in, Reyes and McGill who couldn't throw strikes, or Peterson who couldn't get out of a second inning. That's the point. CP, Chris, what's up, buddy? So just so you guys know, I'm going to do a Mets hot stove tomorrow. Obviously, there's a little bit of news for the Mets. So we're going to Chris is going to be a part of the stream tomorrow on Mets hot stove with a couple of guys from the round table. Nelson's birthday's tomorrow. I don't know if you wanted that out there, but he's going to be 21 years old, so he can drink up. So, make sure you give a shout out to Nelson and give him a happy birthday if you check out his channel. So Chris is going to be there. I got to find out if Hayden's going to be there. I will let you guys know. Give me a second. What's going on? So Zach Scott, as you know, was one of the former GMs / assistant GMs with the Mets, said that in 2021, the Brewers asked me about McNeil for Hauser. This is better. So it's true. Look, honestly, it's true. Well, Joel, and that's the other thing that I didn't even bring up. Coleman Crowell is having Tommy John. And it's a guy that the Brewers took that has Tommy John. You know what I'm saying? And again, that makes it even a better move because you didn't give up really nothing. He was a guy, you basically placed Eduardo Escobar with these two guys that, again, I'm not saying Tyron Taylor is going to start and hit 30 home runs. I'm not that naive. But a 4.12 ERA for a guy who's on the back end of the rotation. No, Zach Scott isn't in the league, but he's a guy. He was basically a big part of the Mets. So, he's been tweeting like this for about a couple of months now. But, hey, good for him. We traded nothing for two pieces that could really help this team. Like, really can. I don't know if he crashed against a cop car, but I know he had a DUI. And again, I don't, abide by that or, think that's a good thing, but he can deserve a second chance. I think that was his only issue. And again, I'm sorry, if guys can come back for hitting their girlfriends or wives or, domestic violence and they can play, why can't an executive get an extra, why can't he get a second chance? I'm sorry, I'm not saying he killed somebody. I mean, God forbid if he did, then, that's a whole different story. That's just reckless endangerment, and all that other stuff. So, oh yeah, absolutely, Eric. Yeah, we know that. This is not saying that they don't have to add Yamamoto or go out and get Montgomery or Imanaga or Snell or whatever. Absolutely. So, this is not saying, oh, the Hauser and Tyron Taylor, all right, that's it. No more all-season moves. We're okay. No, that's not the case. The fact of the matter is the Mets have a back end of the rotation now. You can think whatever you want about it, but Hauser, Quintana, who pitched you an under 4 ERA once he came back, Hauser, who's just over a 4 ERA, and Severino, who I think needs to change the scenery. I'm not saying he's going to throw to a 3 ERA, but if he throws to a 4 ERA, if you got say 4 starters, a 6-man rotation, right? You'll have Quintana, Hauser, Severino. If those guys pitch to a 4 ERA to a 4.5 ERA, that is exactly what you need. Now, you always want them to do better, and I think Quintana can pitch to an under 4 ERA. The fact of the matter is, a huge loss for this rotation last year was Quintana because he was an innings eater who went out there every 5th day. That was a huger loss than Scherzer not stepping up and pitching well and getting injured and missing out Verlander because the Mets were still winning ball games when those two guys were injured or suspended and were down. It was when Quintana wasn't available, obviously out of spring training, and the Mets were scrambling because they already lost 3/5 of their rotation, and it's hard to have 3, 4, 5, 6 guys depth that you can count on. You know, even if Peterson and McGill done pretty decent, you still had a lot more to fill up in those roles. And the Mets were in trouble basically from spring training. From day one, when Verlander was out on opening day, Scherzer, a couple of weeks later, got suspended, and Quintana was out by spring training. Correct, Joel. That was a big loss for the Mets. Quintana, and I think Quintana's going to be fine. He's healthy. He's going to pitch every 5th day and give you innings. And that is huge in the middle of this rotation. I didn't get any snow. I know some people who did upstate, I believe, got a little bit of snow. Morgan, I don't know of any Blue Jays news, but I have a feeling you're going to get overpaid for Bellinger. So, you know, again, I'm extremely scared off by Bellinger. I don't trust him one bit. And I always hate these guys that have good seasons and contract years, especially when they had 2 or 3 prior bad seasons. That scares the hell out of me. Yeah, I think the only snow we got was like a couple of, light inch or so. But yeah, please, I don't need snow. I hope I'm gone from New York over the next 6-7 months so I can get the hell out of here. I don't want to deal with snow. So, okay, yeah. See, I got a lot of rain. Okay, so upstate did get rain. Okay. Yeah, shooter. Okay, but you're not going to give $200 to a guy who can defend the outfield. I mean, you got Tyron Taylor for that. You got a, I'm sorry. I'm not paying $200 million for a guy who's a good defender. All right. Who's a guy that can completely forget how to hit again. And you have a guy for 6-7 years for $200 million total contract, and the guy can only play defense. Like, that's scary to me. Yeah, but again, it's a waste of a roster spot paying all that money for a guy who can just defend. Like, you're not paying him. He's not getting paid $200 million. If he does, people are paying him $200 million for his bat. The defense is a cherry on top. I agree, 100%. I think Snell, Snell's a 5-inning pitcher. If you look, he has very similar strikeout to walk rate, which is scary because if he loses that strikeout ability a little bit, he's a very average pitcher. Now, he's great for 5 innings, but he don't pitch more than that. And Snell is a guy where you can't look at his win and loss record because he comes out in the 5th inning just enough to get the win if the team wins. But you have to rely on your bullpen for the next 4 innings every single time he comes to his spot in the rotation every time. So you're going to need your bullpen, guaranteed. Snell is going to get ace-type money. If what I see as an ace is a guy where it's like, wow, we used our bullpen a lot over the last couple of days. We need you to go 7-8 innings to protect this bullpen. Snell doesn't do that. He never does that. I think he went 7 innings once last year. And he walks the ballpark. He strikes out a lot, which gets him out of a lot of jams, but his pitch count is always high. And even when his pitch count is not high, he's still a 5-inning pitcher. Scares the hell out of me. I think Snell's going to, yeah. And you know what? In the Giants situation, they're paying well. And listen, would you rather be the Mets or the Giants right now? Because nobody wants to go to that city of San Francisco. The Giants are throwing money all over the place. They're willing to overpay everybody that they're looking at, that they want. And nobody wants to go there. And if you didn't hear Buster Posey, the other, I think it was yesterday, he talked about why players don't want to go to San Francisco anymore because the city is an absolute nightmare now. Ever since the pandemic, it's one of the most beautiful cities in this country. Like, who the hell would not want to live in the Bay Area? It's beautiful there, but the city got so bad. The crime is outrageously high. Homelessness is outrageously high. It's there's certain areas that you would move to, but the problem is there's so much crime. You're not safe anywhere, and it's really bad over there. Like, it's seriously dangerous in that city. And it's unfortunate because the Giants are a great organization, a winning organization that has a beautiful ballpark, a beautiful city, yet nobody wants to live in that city. Even the team players that were in Oakland lived in San Francisco over across the bay because San Francisco was the city you wanted to live in, not Oakland. Now it's not even San Francisco you want to live in anymore. It's really bad, and it's unfortunate. Shooter, I don't even think it's the taxes because I think the players would still go there. Players were willing to go there. It's just the fact that it's just the city is I mean, it's in ruins. I mean, just imagine you could live in the most safest neighborhood in San Francisco, yet there's a threat that your house can get invaded. There can be a home invasion. It's so that's how bad it is. You're not even safe in a gated community in that city. Like if you I don't know if you saw the documentary. I forgot what news outlet it was, but they did a whole documentary of the city of San Francisco. In 4 years' time since the pandemic, it was one of the top 5 best places to live, and it's one of the worst now in this country. I'm sorry, if I'm making millions of dollars, I don't want to live in a city that I don't feel safe in or my family. And I'm not saying New York is the safest place in the world, but there's parts of the city where you can get away from where you're pretty okay. I know you got to drive to Flushing and drive to the Bronx, but the cities that that are not the most pleasant, but you can live in areas of Long Island. You can live in areas of Manhattan where you're away from everything. They don't have to deal with the everyday problems of the city. So, no, San Francisco is a hell of a lot worse. Hell of a lot worse. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Nancy Pelosi was the Speaker of the House at one point. Husband basically got caught up in a home invasion. Whatever you think about, the conspiracy theories about that, whatever. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy. I'm sorry. It's sad because it's a beautiful ballpark and a beautiful city. That was one of the biggest tourist attractions in this country. They also got, you can also go to the water and go to Alcatraz as well. I mean, damn, man. It's sad. It really is. Because you know what though? If I'm a guy, why would you want to live in San Francisco, California? I know San Francisco can get cool during the nights and certain parts of the year, but it's a beautiful place to play and live 10 years ago. Now it's just it's sad. It really is. But all right, the news that we were talking about, the Mets trade for Adrian Hauser and Tyron Taylor, a depth piece, a guy that can probably fill in this rotation in the 4th or 5th spot. Tyron Taylor can be an easy bench piece that can play all outfield positions, provide a little pop off the bench, and has some speed as well. So once again, guys, I do appreciate you guys tuning into the breaking news. The Mets are still waiting around for the decision of Yamamoto. We still haven't heard offers that were made from teams yet, the official offers yet. Hopefully in the next few days we get some news about these offers. Tomorrow, Mets Hot Stove. Chris is going to join me. I'm going to see if Hayden will join me tomorrow as well. If not, it'll be me and Chris bringing you Mets Hot Stove, and we're going to talk about this trade. We're going to talk about Yamamoto and much more. Dan Inspiration, Mets traded for trash. Honestly, you don't know baseball if you think it's trash, unfortunately. So, somebody said this chick, Michael Mayer. Give me a second, guys. Let's see before I call it quits. Hold on. Hold on, guys. Hold on. Mike Mayer. Hold on. Let me just search his name. Hold on. I was trying to find it really quickly in the. Hold on, guys. Hold on. Why isn't it working? Hold on. Sorry, guys. That's not good. All right. Let's see. What do they say? What are you talking about? Because I see him talking about the Hauser trade and, what this depth piece is understand and what this means. I saw he posted a video of Starling Marte working out in the Dominican Republic, but that's all I seen. Yeah, about Marte. He's been working out. So, yeah, absolutely. You have to realize. Yeah, well, it's not even about performing well at whatever situation. These are major league players that know their roles. That's the important part. And a 4.12 ERA, the Mets wish they had a 4.12 ERA starting pitcher from 3 to 6 in their rotation because they didn't have that. So, once again, guys, Mets get Adrian Hauser and Tyron Taylor for Coleman Crowe. Coleman Crowe was the guy they got for Eduardo Escobar from the Angels. So, this is a nice depth piece for the bench, for the rotation. We'll see. Hopefully, we get some news on Yamamoto, or at least offers from teams. Excuse me. So we have an idea of what the hell we're looking at when it comes to amount of years and amount of money going to Yamamoto. And then we have a better understanding of what the Mets are going to do. So with that said, guys, thank you for tuning in to the breaking news right here on Talking Mets and Rob. Before you go, if you haven't hit on that like button, please do. This gets out to a broader audience if you hit on that like button. So with that said, thank you for watching. As always, Met fans, let's go Mets. See you tomorrow night, Mets Hot Stove. Me and Chris right here on both of our channels, guys. Have a great night. Let's go Mets.
Meet the Mets, meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kiddies, bring your wife. Guaranteed to have the time of your life because the Mets are really socking the ball. Not